Master the business of speaking with your hosts, Taylor and Austin. You're listening to Technically Speaking.
Welcome to another episode of Technically Speaking. We're your hosts, Taylor and Austin, and today we're talking about a slightly different topic than you normally hear us talk about here at SpeakerFlow. It's because we believe it's deeply important to the work all of you do as experts. We're talking about vocal health, and today we're bringing in Greg Offner. Now, Greg has been a longtime friend of ours at SpeakerFlow, and he got his speaking career started just a couple of years ago. Greg was a professional salesperson by day and a dueling pianist at night, both taking a tremendous toll on his vocal cords. He was told that if he didn't have surgery to repair his vocal cords, he'd never sing again. And since Greg has been on a warpath helping get the word out there to other voice professions, looking at you guys, speakers, coaches, consultants, podcasters, about vocal health. Listen in as we talk about the journey since recovering and getting into professional speaking and what you can do to protect your moneymaker. As always, stay tuned till the end for some awesome resources, and we really hope you like this one. All right, we are live. Greg, welcome to the show.
Hello, hello.
It is awesome to have you, my friend.
It's a pleasure to be here. I was debating, do I open up with the same opener when we started talking?
Please don't.
We'd have to put that little red E symbol next to the podcast title, and I don't know if that's going to turn people off or not.
That's an NSFW opener there.
Yeah.
Not safe for work.
Eventually we'll have SpeakerFlow after dark, and then yeah.
That's right. Yeah, for our more intensive audience. So, Greg, we always like to start off the show with your background. I mean, how did you get into the world of speaking in the first place, and what led you down the path of where you're at today?
Yeah, it's weird. I'm the man with the $1 million voice. And like a lot of your listeners, or I should say, unlike a lot of your listeners, it's not because I made $1 million with my voice. It's because I've spent nearly $1 million on multiple surgeries to repair, rebuild, and restore my vocal folds. The way I got into speaking was I had a career in sales during the day, and I had a career as a professional dueling pianist at night. Very heavy vocal load, a lot of voice use in both of those professions. And I did a very poor job of taking care of my voice. So I found myself in 2015 at the doctor's office being told if I didn't have surgery, within 2 weeks, I would lose the ability to sing forever. And within 2 months, I would lose my voice, speaking, singing permanently. There's no way to restore that once it's gone. They don't do vocal cord transplants. So I was put in this very serious position where my income, really, my day job provided the income that I lived on, was tremendously in jeopardy. And my passion, what kind of helped me get through my 9 to 5, because I really didn't enjoy being an insurance broker, didn't really stimulate the creative juices, but my passion was also in jeopardy. So I had to do something. And so like many people, I went to a Tony Robbins seminar.
That's a great way to break the seriousness.
maybe not what everybody's path would be. But while I was there, I met someone. I met a woman who had an incredible backstory. And while we were chatting over a coffee, she asked me to share my backstory. Now, I didn't want to tell her because hers was so doggone impressive. I mean, really. But she said, do it anyway. And after I did, she looked at me and she goes, you don't see it, do you? Because I had been lamenting, I didn't know where my life was going. I had built up my personal worth, who I felt I was as a person, around what I could do with my voice, around the money that it made me during the day, and around how happy it made me at night. And she goes, you don't see it, do you? I said, what? She goes, all of these things you see as disparate parts of your life, the piano, selling, your interest in psychology, your love of entertainment, all of those things. Look at the guy on stage. That could be you. Why not? And I just thought, damn, you know what? I think she's right. And so I started interviewing other speakers, people who were living their life full-time as workshop facilitators, coaches within organizations, leadership development coaches within large corporations. And I kind of asked them, how did you get here? What are the pitfalls that I might encounter if I decide to pursue a career like this? What do I need to be really good at? And the thing most of them said was, if you can't get clients, it doesn't matter how good a speaker you are.
Amen.
And I thought, well, damn, I just spent the last 15 years in a really tough sales environment in the corporate world. I did pretty good at that. if all this is selling myself, well, I better be at least twice as good as I am at selling insurance, at selling myself. And I also hired a coach. And that coach helped me put the systems and the marketing materials and sort of the thought process in place that allowed me to develop a 6-figure business in my first 8 months in the gig. And then COVID hit. And, through working with folks like you, quite frankly, with SpeakerFlow and other people that I've met through the NSA community and just through being out and about and kind of throwing good energy, good juju out there, I've developed a lot of resources that have helped me. But the one thing I think I still don't see being talked about enough in our community are resources around vocal health. How to help the people that have been doing this for a living or that want to do this more for a living keep one of their most important assets, their voice.
I think that comes from a place of, I don't want to say ignorance in a negative sense, but do you think that people just don't understand how important it is? Do you think that it's just not high enough priority? Like I'm hearing you talk and I'm just trying to figure out why this topic isn't talked about more often when this community specifically makes their living by talking.
Yeah. Well,
you know
listen,
what I mean?
when Adele had to go under voice surgery, who did she tell about it afterwards? How could she talk about how depressed she felt for the first several weeks when she was completely and totally silent while her vocal cords healed? Nobody. When you break your leg, you walk around with a set of crutches and a cast, and it's obvious what happened. When you hurt your voice, there's no external signs. This scar that I have is recent. This is one of the last surgeries. Of the 15 surgeries I've had, 14 of them left no scars that are visible. They didn't have any crutches. They didn't have any casts. There aren't any get well cards. Sorry you broke your voice. Get well soon. And there really should be, because you can't talk to other people. So at least they could give you a card so you could write something back to them. For months, this was my way of communicating with people. If I wanted to go to a party, I had to write down my thoughts on a whiteboard and sort of like point and go, look at this. And when you're trying to write something funny, timing is everything. The moment passes. So I think number one, people don't talk about it because it's so invisible. I think number two, people don't talk about it because if they've had the issue, they can't talk about it. But then I think also number three is that we grow up in a culture where your voice you lose it from time to time. You go to a concert, maybe you have a little too much tequila while you're at that concert and you're screaming along to all your favorite songs, and the next day you're hoarse and people go, oh, must have had a good time. You must have messed yourself up pretty good. How that happens is a vocal hemorrhage. Your voice is so swollen that they can't vibrate properly. That's a real problem, especially if you're a vocal professional, because if you go back out on the road in 2 or 3 days thinking it's healed and it's not, if you're not regularly going to an ENT to get checked by a doctor to see what your vocal cords look like, there's a good chance you could be building damage on top of damage. The way they described my injuries to me was they said, imagine, Greg, because I said, how did it get this bad? I've been singing for years. They said, imagine that you cut your finger, a little paper cut, and then at night you put it in lemon juice. And then in the morning you wake up and you cut it again. At night you put it in lemon juice, cut it again, lemon juice, cut it again, lemon juice, cut it again, lemon juice. We don't know how many years you've been cutting your finger and sleeping with it in lemon juice, but you've been building damage on damage. Now, part of that is from, an acid reflux issue, which is one of the 4 Ds of vocal health that I'll share with you. But when you go out and sing or speak on damaged pipes, that creates more damage.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that it's probably insidious in some ways too, where it's happening without you even really recognizing it. Because as you said, we have these instances in life where we get hoarse or something occasionally, and it's no big deal because, it happens occasionally, and you wait a couple days and you probably don't sound the same. So you probably don't even notice it. But for somebody that speaks professionally, and especially standing on a big stage and probably having to, speak louder and with more power than they would normally if it was just a normal conversation at a coffee shop or something, that damage probably can compound without us even knowing about it. In fact, I don't know, this is a visualization that I have in my head, and you can tell me whether or not this actually aligns with reality, Greg, but I heard the story of a friend of mine who had ran a marathon, and a buddy of his ran the marathon with him. And at some point he got a little tiny pebble in his shoe, and it was obnoxious, but not so much that he was going to stop and take his shoe off and lose his momentum and so on. So he just kept running with it. And although that little tiny pebble was just a mere annoyance while he was running, when the marathon was over, took off his shoe and that pebble was embedded into his foot and he had to go get it surgically removed. So small annoyance compounded over time turned into a massive problem. Is that a similar scenario here? Like, or do you find that like it takes a recognizable amount of damage for it to become a real problem?
Yes. The answer to both is yes. I don't know if I can share my screen with you, but I want to show you, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
No.
I want to show you
For the listeners,
explain
we'll
it.
try to describe as best we can what he's showing
Yeah, well,
us.
I think this will, since you're talking about a stone, right? I think this is just a good visual for you to see real quick. So that is literally what you're looking at right there. That is what tanked my voice. And for the listeners, it is smaller than the head of an eraser, significantly smaller than the head of an eraser. It is so imperceptible, the initial signs of vocal damage, so that if we're not consistently checking in with our voice, I always feel so frou-frou to say that, check in with your voice. But it is sort of like this living and breathing thing that if you're not constantly just checking in, doing a couple things in the morning, middle of the day, at the end of the day, you can really get yourself in a bind without ever even noticing.
I'm curious, as you're talking, I mean, one question that comes to mind is like, I don't even have a box for vocal health. You know, we're on calls all day, on podcasts like this, creating content. We talk all day, right? Any expert who's creating content, getting on stage, doing presentations, regardless if it's virtual, they're talking all day, salespeople and so on. So I think this applies to a lot of people, but I don't think a lot of people have a box to put vocal health into, meaning they don't even know when they're making the mistakes that they're making. So what are some of the ways, like just going about our days, if we're not aware of vocal health, what are some of the mistakes that we're making?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I break it down into these 4 categories, the 4 Ds of vocal health. So one is diet, right? The first D is diet. Acid is the enemy. For me, a big problem was acid reflux. And now some people say, well, I don't have a problem with reflux. I didn't have a problem with reflux. I would eat a chicken cheese steak with buffalo sauce and think nothing of it. The challenge is something called LPR, laryngeal pharyngeal reflux. They call it the silent killer because it happens at night. We don't notice it because our vocal cords don't have nerve endings on them, so they don't feel pain. But we wake up and your mouth might taste a bit metally. Your mouth might seem a bit drier than usual. That could be a sign of LPR. And so just going and getting checked. I mean, the first thing, you want to talk about a box, the first thing any vocal professional can do is go see an ENT, an ear, nose, and throat doctor, once a year, just for a checkup. They should have a video stroboscopy done. It's not very comfortable. They stick a flexible tube up your nose and down your throat, and they look at your vocal folds. They numb you first. Takes about, half hour, but it can save you years. It's taken me 5 years to get my voice to this point, and there's still a long road ahead of me. There are still many things I can't do that I used to do. But when we talk about diet, a mistake I see a lot of speakers make is that they go out and they eat the chicken dinner and then they go up on stage and they talk. Speaking or singing on a full stomach is a recipe for reflux while you're performing. And while you're performing, your voice is undergoing microscopic tears because of the speed and impact of the vocal cords rubbing together. That's what creates your voice, like a double reed instrument for any musicians that are listening. And so if you can speak on an empty stomach, that's generally preferable, or at least eat the lowest acid thing you can. So I always tell people that some couscous or some white rice an hour and a half, 2 hours before you go on stage and speak, not a bad idea if you're really hungry, but wait till after. Have some food afterwards. Especially speakers are traveling, so they get in late at night, right? You're given the 8 a.m. keynote, you get in on the late flight at 12 midnight, and you go, you know what? I'm going to head down to the lobby, grab something to eat real quick, and go to bed. There's a good chance you're going to reflux all night long. You won't even feel it, but you'll hear it the next day.
Talk about a silent killer, huh?
Yeah, diet is super important. Something I do, not everyone will enjoy this, but something I do is take a shot of wheatgrass every morning. Wheatgrass is a very alkaline substance. And so it helps neutralize, the acidity of your body. I'm not a doctor. I don't, pretend to be, but for me, it works. There's a noticeable difference. And I check my pH, my body's acidity, a couple times a day, because for me, reflux is a huge issue. And in fact, of those 15 surgeries, 2 were to rebuild and repair a valve in my stomach. It's a one-way door that lets food in but doesn't let acid back out. At least it's not supposed to. My door was broken. So even if I ate 3 hours before bed while I was lying down at night, acid. I never felt it. I never knew. If I hadn't lost my voice, I never would have gotten it checked out. And that is what leads to esophageal cancer. So there are all these knock-on effects of poor diet, poor vocal health that are really severe for our life that most of us just don't even think about.
Yeah. You mentioned those 4 Ds, and I'm assuming these are 4 different ways that we can improve our vocal health. Can you expand more on some of those?
Yeah. So the first is diet. The second is duration. There are some marathoners out there who say, I'll come into your company, we'll do an 8-hour workshop. That is not what your voice was intended to do. Bruce Springsteen does 5-hour concerts. He is an anomaly. Mm-hmm. Most of the people that I played at dueling piano bars with have all wrecked our voices because we would do 5-hour shows. Now, we weren't speaking the whole 5 hours. It was singing. It was 45 minutes on, 15 minutes off. 5 hours is too long. So I would encourage every professional speaker to work into their contract for every hour to hour and 15 minutes that I'm speaking, I need a half-hour break. And during that break, you don't go mingle with the other people in the room. You go off, you be quiet for 5-10 minutes. Before you start speaking again, do a gentle lip trill to warm your voice back up. And then go out on stage. Because if your voice is your moneymaker, you don't want to lose it. So the duration is incredibly important. The third D is decibel. And this is one that I don't think anybody takes seriously enough. The decibel level that most of us spend our lives in pre-pandemic is absurd. It's insane. Most restaurants are tantamount to having a conversation standing next to a subway car, like driving by. The noise level in restaurants is way too much. The noise level in airplanes, where a lot of speakers, use to fly to their gigs and talk to people the whole way there, that is dangerous for vocal health. So being aware of the decibel level in which we're conducting our life, especially before and after an engagement, can really help. One of the tricks that I've started using there is I take those, those little fungible, those small little rubber ear noise reducers that you see like construction sites. Mm-hmm. So I cut one in half, right? So it's not poking out of my ear. And I just put it in one ear if I'm going out to a restaurant or to a bar or a social event, like a networking event. What it does, if you even just, and you guys have over-the-ear headphones in right now, but if you were to just stick your finger in your ear, you're going to notice that you hear yourself in that ear where your finger is. It's called bone conduction hearing. So what I'm doing is in an environment where I normally wouldn't be able to actually hear my voice because it's too loud around me, I'm creating bone conduction hearing so that I'm not screaming over a loud bar, a loud restaurant. And if you're in a place where when you're talking at that comfortable level, people are going, I'm sorry, what? I can't hear you. That's probably not a healthy place for you vocally. Now that's an extreme. A lot of people are listening to this going, Greg, you had me up till that. You tell me not to go to restaurants or bars. Like, dude, come on. I get it. It's not a problem for everyone. For me, after 15 surgeries, it's a major, major concern.
Sure.
The last one goes back to the first thing I mentioned, the diaphragm. Understanding how to use our breath, how to speak on the breath. I see a lot of speakers, they get really caught up, they get really excited, and then they start talking for like this, and they get 15 paragraphs, and they don't take a breath. That last sentence or two has been just pressure of the vocal folds being artificially pressed together because there's no air to help them make sound. That is incredibly damaging. So if you're one of those vocal marathoners who's doing that on a 6-hour workshop, on a longer stage, if it's a 3-program day, there's a really good chance you're doing yourself some damage. So learning some breathing exercises, understanding that it's not just the diaphragm, there's more to it. That can help a speaker and a singer, not just with longevity, but with actual clarity when they're speaking. And this isn't just for pro speakers, it's for attorneys, teachers, anyone who uses their voice to make a living. This is important stuff.
Wow. Those are 4 really great tips. I'm listening to them like, wow, I need to like fix myself because I don't speak as often and probably as aggressively, let's say, as somebody who's standing on stage, but I do talk a lot. And I know something that I'm horrible at is that last point, or the diaphragm piece, where all of a sudden you start talking really fast and you try to squeeze out a couple last sentences before you take a breath. Yeah, I have a real problem with doing that. And it's usually because I'm just excited about whatever it is that I'm talking about. But like, I mean, even outside of vocal health, I think that's a bad idea. If you can speak more slowly, more intentionally, I think your ideas end up coming across more clearly as well. So I think that tip is
this is such a valuable tip, Austin, to speak more slowly. So I'm glad you brought that up, because on Zoom, people need just a bit slower pace to be able to follow. I'm based in Philadelphia, so here on the East Coast, we are fast talkers. But on Zoom, that's a real liability. Even on stage, that can be a liability. Slowing that rate of speech down allows you to phonate better, lets your voice be more resonant, and lets you use your breath better. Yeah. Good pick.
It sounds like a lot of the vocal health techniques that you employ also can contribute directly to how effective your speech can be, regardless of if it's virtual or live. Like just talking slow and allowing for breath, like you can almost use it as a tool to be more intentful. Yeah,
this new platform, Clubhouse, I'm fascinated by some of the rooms I find myself in, because it's almost as if, this may be a dated reference, but the Micro Machine guy from back in like the 80s, the fast talking dude, he did the FedEx commercial too, I think, or UPS or something. They talk so damn fast, and it's hard to follow the conversation. And as any professional speaker knows, the pause has power. And so by using that, it's not only better for your vocal health, it's better for the audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. That makes a ton of sense. On that note, you've been talking about breath quite a bit as well. Do you have any breathing exercises or things that you try to be mindful of, let's say, as you're either doing the dueling pianos that you do, or speaking on stage, or like, what are some practical tips that we can use in that department to sort of alleviate that problem?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's a little issue that I'm still working on with my vocal team. One of the things that I noticed I was guilty of doing was that I would anticipate the phrase or the song, and I would do this. And you may not notice it, but I'll try to make it really perceptible for the listeners. So I would do the one we want. So there's that breath in, and then there's just a bit of a pause, almost like a setting up, and then the expellation of air. What that actually does is force your vocal folds together to create that initial onset. So what I've been working very hard with my team on is taking the breath and then immediately using it. So I'm pushing it out. I'm trying to do it deliberately so you can maybe hear it over the microphone. And I'm doing it very deliberately. And that means I'm always speaking on the breath. So I'm minimizing the chance at that initial onset of my vocal folds smashing together and creating more damage than is necessary. And so I think just being cognizant of that, and something that I do throughout the day, especially in the morning, is I use a little straw, just a regular straw, and I breathe through it a couple of times just to start centering where the breath is coming from. That's very helpful. When I was in sales, one of my colleagues would always rag on me because he could tell that I had just woken up for our conference call. I was not that salesperson who was up and at 'em at 5 a.m. and ready to go. I was just rolling out of bed at 9. And he would say, "Greg, I can hear your morning voice." And I said, "Well, what do you think I should do about that, CJ?" And he said, "Well, I just scream into a pillow." And I thought, okay, I'll give that a try. Folks, don't do that. Don't be a
Sounds
CJ.
damaging.
That is a horrible idea. So just starting the day, even before if you're on your own, great. If you have a partner or kids, before you say anything to them, just a couple of simple lip trills, just to get your voice warmed up, even just to talk, is really, really helpful for your vocal health. And it clears away that sort of morning voice pretty effectively, much better than the pillow scream.
Wow. That's simple and actionable. I love that. Yeah, we call them horse lips in our family because my wife works with horses, and it's very similar. But I like the trill. I think that sounds a little bit better than horse lips. So
it does, yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that came to mind earlier in the conversation is this kind of silent killer, right? Like you kind of just don't know it's going on until you either get, checked up on it like once a year. Are there like any physical signs that you like maybe just looking back realize like that was an indicator that your vocal health was declining? Are there any ways that, we can catch that our vocal health is declining just in the day to day?
Yeah, so there's one, and I will be honest again, I'm not a doctor.
Right.
So I think the first thing that folks should go out and do is schedule an appointment with an ENT. Every professional vocal user should see one. But there is a video online. If you look up happy birthday vocal or voice swelling, there's a video of a doctor based in the Chicagoland area who talks about singing the song Happy Birthday, but without using P, using B. So it'll be happy birthday, do. Happy birthday. So, and you try to do it in a falsetto. So my voice is still swollen from the last procedure, but so it'd be happy birthday, do. And you hear at the top there how it breaks a little bit. That's a good sign that my voice is a bit more swollen than it should be. It's not really crystal clear. So that's a really simple sort of self-diagnostic technique. Again, it's not a substitute for seeing an actual medical professional, but it's something that we can do just as a daily check-in to see where we are, if we should take a period of 15, 20 minutes vocal rest. Just 15, 20 minutes can be incredibly helpful. Something I'll add, it's not a D, but drinking enough water, and especially folks who stay in hotels, getting a portable humidifier. It is so incredibly important for vocal health. Looking back at a physical sign, I think there was the ability to tell whether or not my voice was swollen internally. So Taylor may be going to a vocal professional more often. Had I been going to one over those 12 years while I was performing, maybe I wouldn't be in this position. The other thing that we can do is we can check in with what we call the SCM muscle, the sternocleidomastoid muscle. It's the muscle that goes along the side of your neck. It's the one that if you're typing at a keyboard all day, it's where you might be feeling like you want to stretch your head to the left and to the right to sort of stretch out. So for the listeners that, they won't be able to see what you're seeing, but what you can do is take your right hand, put it on your chin, and then look over your left shoulder. And as you look over your left shoulder, try to actually look over your shoulder and see if you can see your butt. That's what you want to try to do. That's a motion you want. So you don't want to force your neck with your right hand, but you just want to sort of push it just a tiny bit, and you'll feel a stretch. Doing that stretch is really good. And if that's a painful thing to do, there's a good sign that you've got some muscle tension dysphonia that could be occurring that's contributing to maybe a tired voice, a sore voice, a raspy voice. And again, that's a great sign to go see a vocal professional.
Gotcha. Those are awesome tips. Yeah. Thanks for sharing those. So, Greg, as you know, we're all about creating value for our listeners. You provide an immense amount of value on this show. I feel like I just learned so much. I think I'm just going to have to go schedule that appointment just because I'm interested. What are some of the things that you're working on right now that our listeners can benefit from?
Yeah, so part of my switch to virtual has been helping individuals that are vocal professionals use their voice more effectively, more healthily, and to make more money while they're in this new virtual world. So, if anyone wants to reach out, I'm happy to spend 15 minutes with anyone, just answering some questions on how they use their voice, how they can use their voice more healthily. And if it's something that I'm qualified to help with, such as coaching, I'm creating a workshop, I'm happy to do that. But I think I'm also a great person to speak with if someone is on the fence about, hey, there may be an issue. I don't want to jump the gun and spend the money. Maybe they don't have insurance and they don't want to spend the $1,200 that is about what it costs to go get a video stroboscopy done at an ENT. Maybe they don't want to spend that. I'm happy to chat with anyone about their voice, give them my perspective. I've had several NSA members reach out to me and have said, hey, my doctor recommended that I go in for a surgery. What do you think? What should I expect if someone is dealing with this issue and just wants to talk about the mental side of it? Because for all of us as vocal professionals, not being able to communicate really feels like we're being robbed of an important part of who we are. And that can get really hairy and get really scary. And especially now when we're isolated, you can feel more alone. If anyone wants to talk, I'm happy to. Love to make new friends. If there's something I offer, like one-on-one coaching, the workshop that can help you, I'm happy to be a resource there. But I'm just thrilled that you gave me this opportunity to have a few moments to speak about this topic because I am passionate about it. I want other people to not have to go through what I've had to go through over the last 5 years. I mean, when you have a doctor who's taken care of Neil Diamond, Tony Bennett, Shania Twain, when you have that doctor look at you and go, whoa, I mean, that's some serious stuff right there.
Scary for sure. Wow. Well, thank you so much again, Greg, for being on the show and educating us on the importance of this topic. Listeners out there, if you found this episode valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and if you want more awesome resources like this, go to speakerflow.com/resources. Thank you so much for chiming in. I just wanted to take a second to thank our sponsor, Auxbus. Auxbus is the all-in-one suite of tools you need to run your podcast. And it's actually what we run here at SpeakerFlow for Technically Speaking. It makes planning podcasts simple. It makes recording podcasts simple. It even makes publishing podcasts to the masses simple. And quite honestly, Technically Speaking wouldn't be up as soon as it is without Auxbus. Thank you so much, Auxbus. And if you are interested in checking Auxbus out, whether you're starting a podcast or you have one currently, get our special offer, auxbus.com/speakerflow, or click the link below in our show notes.
Thanks for tuning in today. Check the show notes for more info and see you next time. Later.